video is probably still the way to hook people in, and it's worked with me. It's never been the audio that's been like, okay, you know what, I need to subscribe to this podcast now.
Who's got the fan?
My heat, I'll turn it off. I'll just freeze.
Oh, okay. I was like,
Jesus
it's me.
Christ, head of content.
Sorry. It was on last time as well. You didn't say anything.
Yeah, I know, it was well annoying. Avidly Talks podcast special. We're talking about podcasting as a concept and why B2B businesses should do it. Where to start?
I think we can just start with why it's a good idea to do it. I think many businesses can think it's difficult to count home the ROI and not want to do it. But there are also many successful companies doing podcasts. And it is obviously a case of you have to weigh in if it's worth putting down the effort. But you don't have to do it, make it a proper invested like ad campaign and have good camera and make a whole thing of it. You can
I was watching today, I don't know if you'll know it, Josie, I don't know if it probably is over in Sweden actually, the Overlap, Raza.
Yeah, I'm aware.
Sky Sports podcast. It goes on TV.
Okay,
so
anything sport related.
Yeah.
It doesn't come into my realm of...
Okay, fair enough. Well, you know football is big.
Do you know what football is? Yeah.
Yeah.
How much I know.
There's ex-footballers talking. It's just a podcast, but on TV it's really high production. They're in a special kitchen studio thing.
Yeah.
But I saw the US version. It's just soccer, I think it's called.
Yeah.
But they had the same people, same top big guests. It's for Sky Sports and someone else. I saw it on YouTube where they put it as well. AirPods.
Really?
Yeah. I find that more interesting than you two, clearly.
I've not seen the American one. I've only seen the UK one. I know in the UK, visually it looks incredible. But then sometimes, I mean, they stick the whole episode on Spotify as well to listen to as an episode, but I've not tuned into the US one.
Yeah, it was just recorded like this. Just on a riverside.
I love it.
It had some editing. It had the kind of editing you just did on the last episode, you know, where they were talking about something. Well, if it was this, maybe you can do this on the edit. It had a clip embedded in, or an image. So there was some post-production effort and stuff. But yeah, the actual recording, the two ex-footballers had their AirPods in. I think the host had a headset.
Wow, a headset.
So yeah, and that's like a multi-billion-dollar
I think
budget at their disposal, and they're not choosing to use a big budget. So anyway,
exactly. Why would you? Yeah, I mean, why would you? If you're looking to just spend your money and you need to hid your money somewhere, then sure, go ahead, rent a big studio, have like script writers and do a whole thing of it. Get in actors, I don't know, just burn your budget. But maybe there isn't any budget at all. But if you're actually doing it to increase your reach, just give value, you're not going to necessarily get more reach by having a higher quality or production or give more value by having a better camera or have a suit on.
Sometimes that's not even authentic. And that's another thing. I know last time we talked about podcasting, we said building that connection with people and how you manage to keep people engaged. I think two important things are being authentic and being relatable. And one side of it is being conversational, sharing personal stories, but at the same time, can someone relate to having a £10,000 microphone in front of your face when you're speaking? Would they care? Probably not. Probably doesn't make that big of a difference. And I feel, again, one of the podcasts I watch, one of the things they do when they're joking around is they damage the microphones, like they throw it across or they hit it because they're just laughing that much.
Are they doing the handheld mics?
No, it's like a little stand in front of them.
Oh, right.
And it just falls to the floor, it just drops. And they wouldn't be doing that with, insane budgets and high-tech equipment and whatnot. I think that still makes it a little bit more relatable and authentic as well, like a little bit more genuine of, we don't need to spend thousands and thousands to get started and keep it running as well.
I think what was good there, I don't know if it was just on the front end, but while you were talking about only having low grade equipment, your internet stream froze and I only got every other word. So practicing what you preach.
Definitely. I also wonder, that got me thinking now, sometimes in my, also actually quite a lot, I say once a week, in my TikTok feed, I see a new podcast with great equipment, great studio, great, the mic and everything. But I've noticed that I'm a bit hesitant to trust the podcast. So like I'm a bit like, okay, yeah, what is this now? Is it because it feels just like another podcast in the list. Like it's not authentic, like you said, because it could have been any podcast.
It's interesting how that's evolved. I think you look at the LinkedIn carousel videos, the LinkedIn version of TikTok, the ones that they're promoting and pushing to everybody, or whether it's by design or because of who's enjoying what, probably a mixture of both. It's creator mode, TikTok mode, isn't it? Not polished ads that have been storyboarded and planned together with elaborate scenes and all that. I feel like podcasting's at that place from what you're saying then, where years ago it was the sound quality had to be good. I remember us in our training when we were doing it for clients, Raza, sort of, people will put up with a grainy picture, but they won't put up with poor audio.
No.
But we've got tools like this now. We don't need fancy mics. We've got something that will equalise the levels for us, knock out background noise. I mean, we've noticed, haven't we, on video calls, you can like eat, and the software will remove the crunching, and the tech's making it a lot more accessible, which at the same time has lowered the bar for entry of quality for what people will put up with.
I think people prefer that. I think that's the preference. I think Josephine said, when you see these polished podcasts, you can tell it kind of looks like they've just put so much money behind it. That's when it comes across as salesy to advertising, not raw, authentic, genuine, making someone think, you know what, I could do that. Definitely, when I started it was seeing other podcasts that were similar to ours, like a really basic setup.
Tell us your first podcast story, Raza. So you're heading up our content here at Avidly. I don't think I introduced you. Hi. You've been podcasting for like over 10 years.
You're overselling me there, but yeah.
You're a legend.
No, I wouldn't go that far. Started podcasting probably about 2012, 2013, just with two of my friends, about combat sports, wrestling, all this nerdy stuff that we liked. And yeah, my first episode was recorded via. It wasn't.
What was your first episode called?
I can't remember. It would have been something specific to what we're talking about. I don't know.
Was it like timely? Was it to do with?
Yes, it would have been what's going on.
All the action that week.
Yeah, that's what it was. And I can't remember that far back what was going on that week. But yeah, the setup was super basic. I didn't invest in any microphone at that point. Didn't pay for any software. Sat on my attic stairs, spoke into my phone on a video call, and had Audacity on my laptop. It worked, did the job, 30, 40 plus episodes, and then bought a microphone, the Blue Yeti, which at that time for me was like my biggest investment in anything ever.
How much was it?
I think I paid about $140 for it at the time.
That's nuts.
Yeah, back then,
They're still that price?
They must be, but I was obviously a broke uni student then, so it probably wasn't the smartest thing to buy at the time for a podcast that was still
but look at you now. You're on Avidly Talks.
Well, there you
go.
Made it. Aim high. But yeah, really basic, and I think that kind of made it more enjoyable in not having to invest in a really expensive camera. Obviously now it's different with video, but it was just focusing on audio, basic, just three friends chatting. And I think that's why I'm more inclined to some of the podcasts I listen to now. Yeah, stick to football, the overlap is high production, but some of the other ones that I watch, very low production, and it's the value, the humour, the contents of it is what hooks you in. But yeah, lots of learnings from then that we've applied to our own podcast in Digital 22 days, and then for clients as well.
The sound quality, your DIY studio is interesting.
Yeah.
I've been listening to Mike Skinner's Story of the Streets audiobook this week, and he recorded his, I don't know if it won a Mercury Prize, or it was definitely nominated, but his first album, he recorded it in his wardrobe at home.
Wow.
With a duvet in the wardrobe.
Get the soundproofing.
Yeah. I'm not. You don't need to do that now, though. As you were talking, Raza, that was what 2013. You said
2013, yeah, a long time ago.
We did our first podcast inbound after hours. We used your mic, and the sound was awful because we were on a budget, Josie, like you said.
How bad was it?
Oh, mate, go back to.
You couldn't even listen through, or
cut to one now.
Hey guys, welcome to Inbound After Hours episode 1. Today we have our wonderful team with us.
I can only apologise for that because it's, man, I remember getting feedback. It sounded really good. The value was really interesting. I had to stop listening because the sound was so bad. But we bought acoustic panels for the walls. It didn't help. The office we were in is an old Victorian mill with like bare concrete walls. Yeah, so it was like the worst acoustics.
Meters up, like the ceiling height is like 6 meters.
Yeah, so it was a literal echo chamber. Yeah, like a lot of podcasts can be. But yeah, also then we had to buy a load of kit to compensate. So we've got those mics you were talking about, Raza. Clients, we've podcasted for clients using them, podcast internally, the same mics that they use at the BBC radio studios. But you don't need them now. They're good, and I think we'll have probably a chat around kit and stuff, but you don't need them to get started, back to your point, Josie, do you? I guess the other question that makes me think then for us is, there's benefit there to just get started because it's low cost, but what do you get out of that? A lot of content's low cost, so why do video podcasts?
I'd say there's probably the benefits of going hand in hand with social media. Again, I think Josephine said it of when you're seeing. I mean, I'm going to speak from personal experience. I'm not actively going to like a podcast website or Spotify to look for a podcast. All the ones that I've come across, I've stumbled across by watching a snippet on TikTok or on Twitter or on Instagram. And you can't really get that just via audio. I think it is probably still the visual elements of it that kind of do hook you in. And then you see one, infiltrates your algorithm, a few days later you see another, and then by that point you do go and subscribe, and you know what they look like. You can see the visual cues and things like that. So I'd say video is probably still the way to hook people in, and it's worked with me. It's never been the audio that's been like, okay, you know what, I need to subscribe to this podcast now.
It's interesting that, because it started as an audio format, didn't it?
Yeah.
So what's hooking you? The entertainment, the what they say.
Entertainment, what they say, how they say it, body language, facial expressions, like literally everything. And I think it's easier to see authenticity visually. Yeah, okay, you can probably figure out when you listen on audio if someone's reading through like a scripted monologue, but visually it's hard to manufacture that.
Definitely.
How raw something is.
Yeah, and that comes down to the quality of the conversation. So the quality of the production doesn't have to be good, but the quality of the conversation actually has to be good. Because if you'd be, listening to something very scripted, you'd have to be in school or, being forced or tortured to try to actually take it.
I'll tell you what I do like, and this isn't what we do for B2B companies or what I'd advise they do. There are podcasts that are scripted and they're like a radio quality production, aren't they? Mm-hmm. That's a different thing. We're not on about that, are we?
No,
or at least
no,
I'm
definitely.
not picturing that. You don't exactly mean for businesses to do that.
Exactly. No, exactly. And scripting something doesn't. You can still get a good quality conversation from that. You can be a good writer, but I guess what we're saying is you can have all the budget in the world, all the the best equipment in the world, and best script in the world or topic, but if you're not authentic, it's not going to cut through, and humans can actually sense that even from a screen.
So what should you put across then? You're being authentic and the quality has to be good, but what are you trying to put across if you're a business?
I think it comes down again to relationship building. I think podcasting is a way to build relationships and connect with people. You invite someone into a conversation and they get to know the person that they're listening to, feels like it. And I think B2B sales has to be human and authentic and relationship building. It's still people buying things.
And buying them from people. That's the thing, isn't it? I think Josie's right there. Authenticity, reliability, I'd say use conversational tones. That's probably going to hit home the most with people. Real, natural. I think that's when if you start scripting things, you can't then dive into a different natural topic, which makes sense because you've already scripted the entire thing you're going to be speaking about. Share personal stories, whether that's vulnerability, real life experiences. I think that makes you a lot more relatable with people, a lot more memorable. Show your personality. Not everything has to be humor. Humor resonates with me, but whatever your thing is that makes you showcase your passion, the quirks that make you stand out. I think these things are what people resonate with.
I'd push people to use humour regardless, to be honest. I think...
Even if they're naturally bad comedians.
I mean, that could be even funnier, to be fair.
That's true.
But every company, though, has got someone who's funny.
Yeah.
And perhaps you pair them with someone who can play the straight guy, play the host. Is that the comedic term? You're the one from the drama background, Josie. The straight person, and in a comedy duo, there's always a...
Never heard
it. Okay, never mind.
I don't know what you're on
about. Do you know what I mean, Raza?
I know what you mean, but I've never heard those terms. So,
I'm sure I might have the wrong term. But there's someone who sets up the gag, and then there's the one who gets to be the funny one.
Yeah. Well, it's like when you have a band before the band. Is that what you're talking about?
No. What, the warm-up act?
Yeah.
No, I mean like in a sketch show or a sitcom. In Friends, Monica is usually the straight one who doesn't do something daft.
There's a different, a bunch of character types just to get a good mix, and there's like a best practice for that. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Get what you mean.
So like, there'll be someone in your business who can bring the humour to the table, regardless if it's financial, if it's in the health industry and pharmaceuticals, if it's banking, if it's boring manufacturing products of widgets to go on a machine or whatever. You can still find some value that's got humour in and entertainment and connect with your prospective buyers.
Yeah.
But go on.
Yeah, I think also important to add is that can come from a place of passion as well. I'm randomly thinking of Kyle Jepsen. Like, he's so passionate about what he does, and he's a bit humorous. Like, just he just happens to be, because he loves what he does, and he's really into it. So but he's not necessarily a comedian.
That passion's engaging, isn't it? There's podcasts come to mind where, I don't know, it's they get a guest on. It's a podcast you follow, and they've got various types of guests. But they bring someone on who's got this niche thing. But listening to somebody talk about something niche, I find that super interesting. Yeah.
It's like, do you know the movie Soul? It's a Pixar movie, isn't it?
I've not seen it. I've seen it.
Okay, I haven't seen it. Anyways, it's a children's movie. Let's just call it for what it is. But they're basically talking about passion, and when you have soul, that there's like an avatar, or your soul just floats above your head. Basically, when you're doing something that you're really, really keen in doing, but that you love, and I think humans can detect that in other humans. Like, it's just a vibration, sort of.
So hopefully that removes any barrier of it having to be too polished, and I think also takes us into how to get started then on podcasts, which, if you just be natural and show that character and show your human side, people will connect with it. And once, just last bit on sort of framing it, I think that gives you the right expectation of what this podcast is. Josie, you mentioned it. Don't be too salesy. And that's what made me think of saying it's not about selling. And you talked about the ROI being... It's not, I do 100 podcast shows and I earn 3 clients. It doesn't work as linear as that. It's that one time at an event where you meet someone, they already feel like they know you, or when somebody comes to work for your company, they've checked out the podcast and they know what your sales team is like that they're joining, etc., etc. These are, I don't know, sort of intangibles that make it worth doing. But something more tangible is how much content you can get from it. You're putting your experts on in front of a camera without any effort from them, picking their brains, getting them to say stuff that shows you're an expert, and you've got it there on camera for free. Whereas if you say to someone, right, we're going to film you explaining this product, that's going to be boring content.
Yeah.
Move on to how. Raza, you told us about talking into your phone, and you sort of, you deliver this service for clients. How can people literally get started with podcasts? So be specific.
First thing I'd say is start small. No need to change spare bedrooms into expensive studios or anything just yet. I'd say even before you look at equipment, I'd say have a clear plan, build a strategy. What is it you want to talk about, rather than investing in even small things and then making a plan. So what is the strategy?
How do you know if podcasting is for you then? How do you know you're ready to go and buy Riverside or set up a Spotify account?
I'd say before investing in any of that, there are a lot of free tools out there anyway that give you enough storage and whatnot to start. I think that passion point that Josephine said before, rather than that, not just showing passion when you're on camera or you're on the episode, I think that passion has to translate into actually making the podcast work. For me, that meant 16 listeners or viewers on the first episode, but that passion was there, okay, let's try and get more and more. Yeah, we didn't. It wasn't anything groundbreaking, but that passion was there to keep going. And it worked. And I'd say, whether you're ready or not, is you have to try it. And then tweak things as you go along. I don't think that you're ever going to get a definitive yes or no, yes, we're now ready for it, or no, we're not. So again, it would start with an actual strategy. I think something we discussed previously is a lot of people think they have a plan, but what they really have is one good episode, and that's it. It's a topic, not something you can actually scale up. So I'd say think along those lines first. Of, have you got something that you can actually scale up from there? What kind of topics you can talk about? This for Avidly is great because you're not boxed into just talking about one thing in terms of marketing or whatnot. You can talk about absolutely anything. Same with things like football and pop culture. You're not boxed into one thing. You can branch out into absolutely everything. So that's one thing with clients, is when they say they have an idea for a podcast, they don't have an idea for an actual podcast, they have an idea for an episode. And that probably tells you you're not ready. You just want to film one thing, and then what would you do for episode 2? What would you do for episode 3?
How do you challenge? How do you get through that challenge?
Of what, sorry?
What do you do? Do you broaden that out into a theme, or?
I'd say a theme. You probably look at what competitors are doing, what others are engaging with, what's doing well on social, what is the client's product or service, how can you actually make that engaging? Because the last thing you want is just sitting on the podcast and just talking about your product for 30 episodes. So that's pretty pointless. I think you would have to obviously work with the client of what the goals are from it, what they're trying to achieve, getting them to understand as well that ROI isn't the be all and end all of what we are trying to do. But yeah, it's just about helping them change that one episode idea into something that can last for a long time.
And it's a chat, isn't it? I think framing it, what I'm picturing there is some trade show, trade floor at a conference. Sort of, what do you talk to your potential customers about? Because you don't just stand there and go, we've got a product that has this kind of feature and this feature and this feature and this feature. No, you talk about things. What is it you're struggling with? What are the, how are you finding things? What's going on in our world? You talk about those things. And that's podcast content, isn't it?
Sure. I think sometimes as well, it's when clients might have ideas, it's actually like a 4-part webinar than an actual podcast. So I think it's kind of just deciphering, do they actually have an idea, or do they need our help in creating something from the ground up?
when it comes to creating, where can people, how can people, what do people need to get started?
Laptop or phone. Software-wise, Audacity is free. I'm sure that's still around to this day.
I'm going to Google it.
Yeah.
I completely forgot about Audacity.
Adobe
but it's been
Audition.
swallowed up.
Audition was common, I think. When I started podcasting, towards the end of it, Audition is what we used. So obviously we quote-unquote graduated from Audacity. Audition, again, pretty easy to use once you're familiar with it. Things like this, Riverside, I think people, even without technical capabilities, can use it. Great for remote interviews as well. Adobe Podcast, I think it's in beta right now for most features, but they have some things you can use right now. That looks like it could be a really good tool if they keep pumping investment into that. Equipment-wise, first up, probably depends on your laptop. I'm not using a microphone right now. I guess Paul will tell me afterwards if the audio was fine or not. But yeah, there's the Blue Yeti, probably the most common microphone, entry-level microphone, I'd say.
And it looks like a podcast mic.
Yeah, to be fair,
it looks cool.
The company has a lot of podcast mics, but I'd say that's probably the best entry-level one, and you probably don't need to break the bank even more than that. I'd say that would do the job. Rode have good ones. PodMic is really good for them. The Shure MV7. That's
what are you two using now? Because I can't see your mics.
My MacBook, not a microphone.
Yeah,
all right, the laptop mic.
Yeah, the built-in. Yeah, that's what it is. Just on that.
This is what I was. Go on.
Yeah, no, I'm just thought of it just now that, yeah, I think that your audience will like grow with your equipment. You can start really basic, and then, as your audience is growing, then you can invest in something more advanced.
I think that's when you probably are. I don't want to say setting yourself up for failure, but you will get disheartened when I just spent £5,000 and I got 3 listeners on episode 1. I'm going to give up now.
I think that's worth a mention. This thing as a concept builds. Yeah. It's like inbound blogging when that used to work.
Yeah.
It's we're not, when we're doing business podcasts, we're not Joe Rogan or The Overlap. People are not out there going, oh, Acme Widgets podcast just dropped. That's not happening. You need to strategize how to share it with your audience, how to repurpose it into social posts, how to repurpose it to TikTok videos, how to repurpose it into newsletter content, how to send it to your customers, and these things build.
Well, that's the thing. When you look at these podcasts, yeah, The Overlap got 1 million subscribers very soon, but that's because Gary Neville's had a 20+ year playing career, Roy Keane's had a 20+ year playing career, Joe Rogan, was already a big name in the mixed martial arts industry and whatnot. Of course, they're going to get a good foot in the door earlier on. We don't have that luxury of being that well known across the world to get all these thousands of subscribers. We have to work up from it and have realistic expectations as well. I think the worst thing you can do, and something we advise clients all the time, is please don't compare yourselves to the biggest podcasts in the world, because you don't understand the machine behind them. It's very different to what we're doing.
Yeah, those are two different things. Having a podcast as your business and making a podcast as a part of your marketing strategy, that's a tiny piece of a full.
You're the one actually pushing the buttons and getting the spoke off the wheel of podcast content, Josie. So give us some advice on you've got a 30-minute episode, say, and we do 30 minutes because that's the average commute time. It gives you enough time to dive into topics. But you can do micro episodes at like 10 minutes more frequently. You can do deep dives for like an hour. Whatever format you end up doing, it's important you repurpose it and offer snippets. How do you do that, Josie? What's some starter advice on that?
I think a good advice is just, firstly, you should probably think about what you enjoy. Like, what are some snippets that you catch yourself going, oh, hold on, that was interesting, and then pick those out. But obviously, long term, you should be aware of your own biases. I mean, if I'm really naturally keen to hear about frogs, or I don't know, like just some really niche thing that maybe not a big audience would enjoy or find intriguing, then I would probably notice that the snippets wouldn't get that big of reach, maybe not good engagement. But
you talked about this in a planning meeting this morning, didn't you, of trying to spot the themes of what makes stuff get reshared more or watched more. Sometimes it's the guests, sometimes it's it had big exciting captions on.
Yeah.
And it's keeping an eye on what the audience is reacting to, I guess.
Yeah, because that's going to differ because we're dealing with human content, like the epitome of it, because it's humans. And they're as unique as every human being is, as cliche as that sounds, but that's true.
Raza, I don't know if you've been on playing with it yourself, hands-on, but this Riverside tool that we use, it has this magic clip functionality, which zones in on like the most interesting bits based on changing your inflection in your voice, or I don't know how it works.
Yeah, I think it's that actually, like the how much the voice changes and pauses and yeah.
You guide it, don't you?
You can.
Like, find me clips about X.
But that's the thing of when you're talking about how easy it is to start. When we had an in-house videographer, when I was doing it by myself, you'd have to physically sit through every episode and listen to it 2 or 3 times and spend a lot of time doing that to find out, okay, what is that snippet? Now you have software. I didn't know that. Now you have software that does this for you. I think that helps with consistency as well. That's a big one of helping you save time and start thinking about the next one, start thinking about promotion of this rather than, okay, I've done it now, I need to spend a week editing it, when actually software now can actually help you do the bulk of that.
Yeah, it's very time saving.
I think another big one that people starting podcasting don't think about is the hosting platforms. That's always a big one. Buzzsprout, probably one of the biggest. Anchor, I'd say, is probably the most famous now. That makes it, or in general, it's easier than ever to get on Spotify. That's the number one place people want to be now. Back in the day,
that's why we use Riverside.
Yeah, so I'm guessing it helps with the RSS feed and get onto Spotify. Yeah, back in the day, it was having to apply to get onto Spotify, and they were very, very, very selective of what could end up there. Now you can just go in and submit your podcast pretty easily. So yeah, I think the tools are there. The tools are there for everybody. It's
putting the time into it, and I think well, let's end on this because it's more fun actually. What should people not do?
Yeah.
And I think I was just going to say, don't start with just one episode up your sleeve.
Yeah.
Get a few in the bag ready to go, because it's easy to fall out of the habit of doing this. Anything when you're recording, what should people not do?
I think it ties into what Raza's made a point about staying consistent, but that goes not only with staying consistent with your posting, but also your branding. I think many podcasts think like, oh yeah, it's the reason why I don't have so many listeners is the branding, so I change it up, or I try this and change new thumbnails. But especially for snippets and things like that to be recognized in socials, it takes 3 times before your brain can recognize something.
Yeah.
So the second time you see it, you're not even going to know if you've seen it before. It's the third time. So, yeah, stay consistent with your branding as well.
I'd say don't aim for perfection. I'd say keep it as natural as possible. If that means you have tech issues on the episode, you have it. I think the worst thing you can do is trying to manufacture something. People can see right through that.
Nice. I feel like I could, maybe because I'm passionate about it, but I feel like I could carry on going on to, at this stage do this, at this stage do that. You can go right down into this of sort of episode naming structure and why that matters, and the SEO of podcast search, and we probably will and probably should, but we've hit our self-imposed time limit at the moment, so we'll leave it there and perhaps dive into some of those things another time, even if it's a mini episode, which you two won't watch Bluey, but we've been enjoying the Bluey mini episodes at our house. What podcasts would you recommend people go and check out, just to finish on?
Everyone has their own taste. I don't want to be...
Yeah, I mean, it can be anything. That's the beauty of it, and we didn't talk about that. Sort of, your podcast here is going in the mix alongside a true crime podcast.
Yeah.
It's try and help people but be conscious that actually they could just turn you off and listen to a comedy podcast. So
I'd say From my side, there's a few, and I think they all do different things very well. The Rest is Football is a good one. Alan Shearer, Carolina Micah Richard, just three mates constantly on a video call. Really funny. And that just shows you don't have to invest in big setups and studios and try and get calendars aligned to be there in person. Like Taste Buds, I know again they're on a break right now. Such a super simple concept of talking about one person prefers this food, one person prefers another. Let's get our community on social media to vote on our arguments. I think that's a really good example of getting your community involved, and that's how you get hooked in. Another one, The Basement Yard. I think again, two silly guys in the US who just talk absolute nonsense throughout every single episode. But what you'll notice there is they're very good at leveraging social media. Huge on TikTok just with their clips. And I think a lot of that audience is then translated into actually subscribing to their podcast like I have. So there's a lot you can learn from those three. Ignore the fact that they're all the big names now and they're comedians and they've got legendary football careers. I just think they do the basics of podcasting really, really well.
There's that strategy in action, though. You said, Joe, the end goal's different from us. Our version of subscribers eventually is trying to turn them into coming to the website, or when they're ready to purchase from whatever our business does, we're front of mind. And what podcast are you enjoying, Josie?
Just now when I thought of what podcast do I actually listen to and what do I enjoy, I realised they all have the same, they have a common theme.
Just you singing.
What?
Just you singing.
as a podcast, no.
Yeah.
No, but they all have the same, not structure, but they have a really good, I know exactly what I'm getting. They have good production, exact same format every single time. And the first one is Mel Robbins' podcast. It's about like personal development. And she begins her podcast episodes with, "Hey, it's your friend Mel." And that is just the hook.
You're in the zone.
Yeah. And then there's a Swedish marketing podcast, which I've basically structured this whole Avidly Talks podcast with just a snippet, which, a teaser for the episode, then the intro, and then the episode, which again, I think is just really gets you in the zone. The third one is Ken Coleman show, which is an American one. It's more like it is actually a radio show, I think, from the beginning, but they upload episodes. It's a radio show, but they make episodes of the radio shows.
I get you, yeah.
So they snippet that out. They make like a 40-minute episode of a topic that they cover in the radio show. But again, it's the same like structure of it. Intro, the sounds, and that they stay consistent with it. And the branding is consistent. There's a difference you can tweak things, but when you go completely do a rebrand, it's something else. So yeah.
I can't believe Avidly Talks didn't make your top 3.
Oh no, that's so bad. That is so bad. That's my top. That's a special list, and that's
nice.
One.
Nice.
Yeah.
What about you, Paul? What are you listening to?
Probably, it's definitely not worky, but my favourite one at the moment is the Under the Cosh is a football podcast. We get ex-footballs, and it's okay. It's very funny, but they're quite long, and I've found myself listening instead to what they do called the Friday Club, which is just off topic from their football podcast, and it's just like an underlying sort of agony aunt type stuff for blokes, but it's blokes pub humour basically. It's just Friday Club after work having a pint, and people sending funny stories from that trip they went on, or I'm in this scenario, what should I do? And some of it is a bit sort of juvenile, but then there's a nice underlying, like, actually, jokes aside now, what you should really do is go and talk to your dad. You've not spoken to him for 6 months. So there is a nice underlying element to it, but it's a bit of a guilty pleasure because it's not the most sophisticated or cool thing to listen to.
No, I think we all have those.
And then it just reminds me of like being in the dressing room at cricket, to be honest. It's very that kind of humour. And then the other one, I was just having a look. Just one I'd like to recommend is Do This, Not That. which shock horror, Jay Schwedelson. But I'm recommending it because of the format. It's regular. It's 10 to 12 minutes. It's got that same format every time, a bit of what's been going on. It's like a newsletter, but it's delivered in a podcast format. And I think that's something you can explore. If you're short of time, commit more frequently and do a nugget of what's going on in your world, especially in a B2B drier industry. Keep up to date with what's relevant to your customers. Yeah.
I like it.
Nice one. Let's dig into some of those other bits. Perhaps we even do it in a LinkedIn Live session or something, but we can look at sort of how to practically do it and get hands-on, but share your podcasts as well. Thanks for joining me, Raza, Josie.
No problem.
Been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us.
Like, subscribe and all that stuff. I've not got my script with me. I forgot, sorry.
Yeah, please,
Bye.
if you enjoyed this episode. Oh, okay, bye.
Oh, go on.
Hey, did you enjoy this episode? Then be sure to leave us a comment, a review, and hit that follow button. See you next episode.